So I remember I went in one day with my little key fob for the building, the radio station, and I went to the boss and said, "Here's my key fob," and he was like, "Why are you handing that in?" I said, "Because I'm done. I'm not coming back." Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name is Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. And today, we do another Q&A episode. So today's Q&A episode, it's the first one we've done in a little while. I actually can't remember the last time we did one, but we did one probably about 6 months or so ago. So I thought it about time to do another one. I know a lot of you always have some great questions, a lot of great questions always asked in the Facebook group. If you're not part of that yet, make sure you jump in there right now. I know people are sometimes worried that they'll get spoilers or something like that about the episodes, but everyone's pretty good in there when it comes to ruining, what happens in particular stories. So if you're not a member yet, make sure you join that group. But this Q&A is also different because I'm doing my first ever, and I know, welcome to 2025, Jack. I'm doing my first ever video podcast. I don't like that term, but it's okay. I'm going to use it just for this one particular moment in time. So if you're listening to my show on Spotify, you should be able to hopefully see me as well. And also if you're listening on or watching on Patreon, it'll be on there for you as well. I figured that, I owe the bank so much money for building Prison Pod HQ Part 3 that I may as well use it for the reason in which I set it up for. So yes, hello to all of you in visual podcasting world. Lovely to see you. But yeah, we are going to do this Q&A I asked a little while ago in the Facebook group. Another reason to be part of the Facebook group. I ask you to chuck in your questions there. Everyone who asked a question, even if I don't get to your question or I don't answer it for some reason, you will still go into the draw for a 12-month Patreon subscription, which gives you access to all of my shows early and ad-free. So that's 1 Minute Remaining, Crime at Bedtime, and Mysteries at Bedtime, early and ad-free. So you get that. Plus, for those in visual world, you'll get one of these. For those who can't see what I'm holding in my hands, it is a 1 Minute Remaining branded sippy cup. Thank you, Misty, for doing those. You can get those. I think they're like $20. Great value, and they're fantastic. Anyway, so you get one of those and a 12-month subscription to the Patreon account. I know there's people who obviously listen to this show on Apple as well. Unfortunately, I can't give away free Apple subscriptions. If I could, I would. So it is just Patreon. But anyway, without further ado, let's get to your questions. We'll kickstart with Britt Sloan, who says, has Jack ever spoken to infamous Australian criminals to learn what makes them tick and how they feel about their crimes now, including Julian Knight, Martin Bryant, and Charles Denyer? So I get this question quite a lot. And I have answered it a few times before, so I won't spend too long on it, but I'm not able to speak to Australian prisoners because of the amount of red tape that's involved with doing that. It's not to say I could never speak to one. I probably could, but I just don't have the time to be fighting the red tape. When it comes to America, their First Amendment right, the freedom of speech means that it's pretty easy to be able to talk to people who are incarcerated in America. Not every state. Some states I can't talk to them, but pretty much that's the reason. America is the easiest place to speak to people who are incarcerated, because then people ask me, what about New Zealand? What about the UK? And because those countries are all part of the Commonwealth, they all pretty much have the same rules in regards to speaking to people who are incarcerated. So, yeah. So I have spoken once to an Australian. Well, actually, no, I tell a lie. I haven't spoken to an Australian person who's in prison. I spoke to someone who's in prison's brother. So this guy who's in Australian prison saw me on Sky News talking about my show, and then said to his brother, "Hey, can you contact this guy?" So we had a bit of a back and forth, and I was trying to see if I could do something with that story, but again, it was just so difficult. And I am just one person, although I have Alyssa, who helps me on the show, does a lot of work in helping me find people to speak to. And helping with the episodes and stuff with research. But when it comes to, I'm pretty much am a one-man band, and it's just too difficult. So that is the reason why I don't speak to people who are in Australian prisons or elsewhere, really. Jamie Davidson, has Jack spoken with or plans to speak with Sandy Melga? I'm very torn on that case. So I didn't, to be honest, I had no idea who this person was until you asked this question, Jamie. The answer to that is I haven't thought about speaking to this lady, but I did do a quick look up, and this leads from my previous answer to a question where I said I can't speak to everyone in every state in America. Sandy is incarcerated in Texas, which is one of the states, unfortunately, that I am unable to speak with people who are incarcerated, because in order for me to do that, I need to get permission from the prison, and part of that permission is having an address in America and a driver's license that you've got to show them. And obviously, I don't have either of those things. So unfortunately, I cannot talk to that person. But thank you for your question. Kathy Lee, have any of the corrupt police, prosecutors, etc., ever been charged or held to account for lying, falsifying evidence, withholding evidence? Not in any of the cases that I have covered to date, I don't believe. No. And I have spoken to Michael Leonard about this before, and he says it's very unusual for especially prosecutors. Prosecutors are pretty safe from prosecution. I mean, they can be prosecuted, but Michael Leonard says it nearly never happens. Corrupt police do find themselves in trouble from time to time. However, you'll find in a lot of the cases in wrongful convictions where police have had some sort of hand in it, unless it's like complete and utter obvious corruption, they've almost not only not been reprimanded or charged for it, but a lot of the times, a lot of these guys get promotions. So go figure. But no, so not in any of the cases that I've covered, there's been nobody who has been charged or held accountable, which is obviously one of the biggest problems, especially when it comes to prosecutors, because, you know, Michael Leonard has said to me so many times, you know, yes, there should never have been charges made against this particular person for whatever reason, but then, you know, a prosecutor's job is supposed to be, the prosecutor's supposed to say, hold on a second, there's not enough here. And if they don't do that and they continue to build a case around that person, then, you know, they're as at fault as the police were in the first place. They should be turning around and saying, no, we're not prosecuting this person because there's no evidence here. But obviously we find that doesn't happen. You know, there's obvious stories we've covered where prosecutors have withheld evidence, which is the Brady violations that we talk about all the time. But again, they're just not held accountable for any of that because the bar, see, what's incredible is the bar is seemingly so low when it comes to those sorts of things, you know, especially when a person who's incarcerated goes for one of the things that they tend to go for is ineffective assistance of counsel. And Michael's also said that bar is so low because the defense attorney can simply say, well, I didn't think that was necessary, or I didn't think, you know, he needed that. And the judge can go, okay, fair enough. Well, that was your judgment at the time. And if you didn't think that, you didn't think that. And a prosecutor pretty much does the same thing. Which is obviously extremely one-sided. But anyway, that's that. Donna Fox, has Tony Duke published any further cookbooks? No, but I did speak to Tony only a couple of weeks ago via message just to check in, see how he's going. And he is working on a book at the moment. It's not a cookbook, but it is another book. I'm going to hopefully get him on for a catch-up chat very soon, and we'll delve deeper into what that book's all about. But he's doing seemingly very well, as Tony always does. As we know, very strong faith, and a man who's, well, not only strong faith, but he's now Minister Duke, and he's doing a lot of work within the prison, helping guys and doing well for, you know, someone who can be incarcerated. So we'll find out more about Tony and his new book, hopefully very soon. Claire Loyson Rook, any updates on Saul Contreras? Okay, so this is going back to now the Texas situation, because Saul Contreras, for those who may not remember, he's currently incarcerated for the death of a small child. And now he obviously has always maintained his innocence. And in fact, he gave a confession, but what he's saying is a coerced confession or false confession. And we spoke all about false confessions. And he had an innocence-style organization working to help him get released. And the attorney for that was the one who actually did the interview for me, because I couldn't speak directly to him because of the issues in Texas again. So I was asking her the questions, she was asking him, and we were doing it that way. So for that specific reason, again, Texas, I'm unable to, you know, really sort of delve too much into how Sal's going, because another reason for that is because the Innocence organization that was helping him actually closed down. So that's the situation with them. So unfortunately, no updates on Sal's story for anyone, unfortunately, I'm afraid. Russell Smith, our director of First Impressions in the Facebook group, Rusty says, do you choose the music for each episode, or is that the domain of Dom? Now, Linda also asked a similar question, so I'll lump these in together. She goes, how do you pick the music for each episode? Do you have to pay to use it? So we'll start with Russell's question. So yes, I choose all the music for every single episode. When he says, is that Dom's domain? For those who may not know, Dom is my audio genius. You'll hear his name at the end of every episode. So Dom has been with me from the very start. We used to work together in radio. And so he does, basically, he tidies up the episodes for me. So I put them all together. So everything you hear is me, my choice, the music, the narration, obviously, how it's all edited. I do absolutely everything. I send him a quote-unquote completed episode. And then he does his thing, tidying it up, checking the pacing for it to make sure it's not too quick or too slow, the levels, the music, so it should all sound lovely the whole way through. That's what Dom does for me. But yes, I choose every bit of music that is on each and every episode. So Linda Pauline Wakeman. Linda says, how do you pick the music for each episode? It can be a joy and it can be an utter nightmare to do, because I do take the music side of things very, very seriously, and I do sometimes that's the longest thing that I do is trying to find the right piece of music for what we're talking about. So let's take one of the most recent cases, Dwight Bergeron. Of course, that is set in the bayous of Louisiana. I had the most fun picking the music for that because I really tried to go down that sort of bluesy Louisiana deep South style US feel, which I really enjoyed. Like there was and sometimes I just like happen upon a piece of music that just it just sings to me, and I'm like, that is it. In fact, this is my favorite piece of music that I found for that particular series. Let the bellows blow. Let the fire. This is just phenomenal. This piece of music just came randomly. I was just flicking through and it bang and hit. It's like when Wanted, my series Wanted, people always compliment the sort of intro song for that, and that just happened. I just was scrolling through. I just hit this particular piece of music and I went, that is it. That is the song that I want for Wanted. So sometimes it can happen as easy as that, and other times I can just be scrolling and just find nothing. So, but yes, it's sort of I tend to have a sound idea in my head, and sometimes it works out perfectly, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah. Do you have to pay for it? Yes, I do. Absolutely. I have multiple subscriptions to many different services that allow you to use music. And yes, I pay a monthly subscription for all of those. Another question here from Russell Smith. What was your plan B if the podcast hadn't been the raging success that it is? I know you wouldn't have gone back to radio, and I've seen you wield an axe. So an arborist you are not. Would you have done comedy full time, or perhaps worked in medicine, or become a teacher? Or was a plan B even considered? Mind you, I'm exceptionally glad OMR did work out for you. For us, I mean you. Okay, so yes, I'm no arborist. What Russell is referring to there is a little while ago I was chopping wood for the wood burner we've got in the house, and I videoed myself, and as I hit a piece of wood, it flew and smashed me in the shin, and it was extremely painful. So no, I wouldn't have become an arborist. Plan B, there was no plan B. I say this all the time, but when I was in radio, I remember interviewing Ed Sheeran. I know, name drop, Clang. And I said to him, I said, oh, what was your plan B if the music hadn't worked? He said there wasn't a plan B. I was always going to do music. There was 7-8 billion people in the world, whatever it is. And I knew that somewhere I would find my people and they would find my music and I would do something. Even if I had to gig in just pubs for the rest of my life, that's what I was going to do. There was no plan B. And throughout my whole entire life, I've always kind of had a plan B, or always for many years, I wanted to get out of radio. I had enough of radio. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I would try other things, but I wouldn't try them properly because I was always doing radio and trying this new thing at the same time. My wife will tell you, I tried many different avenues to remove myself from my radio career. An illustrator, YouTube stuff, all sorts of, writing sitcoms, stand-up comedy, all these things. But I never really went full on with it. I was always, doing radio and that. So I never really sort of went as hard as I probably should have on those things because I was terrified because radio was a constant. It was a wage and I knew it and it felt comfortable, and trying to jump out of that and do something on my own was terrifying. But when it came to the podcast, I was literally at my lowest ebb when it came to radio. I was extremely depressed. I was hating work life, which then obviously affected home life. And so I started building this podcast, and I was building it while going to work every day to the radio. So I would get up super early in the morning, work on the podcast, go to work, come home, hang with the kids and the family. They'd go to bed. I'd go into the toy room at the time and keep editing the podcast, and then I'd go to work the next day. And I was going into work, and that wasn't sustainable. And the reason why this time I chose to go, you know what, I'm going all in, was because I was going to work and I was telling the people at work about what I was doing and telling them the stories, and they were so enthralled by the whole thing. Like every day I'd walk in, they were like, first thing they're saying, oh, quick, well, let's go for a coffee. We want to hear what's happened now. So that kind of went, hold on a second, there is something here. And I've said this before in other interviews that I've done, but my wife and I had borrowed some money from the bank to renovate our home, which we'd had for a long, long time. And, I was promised my wife, look, we will do this place up, I promise. And then, so we borrowed the money, and I was like, yeah, so honey, that money we borrowed to renovate the house, I kind of want to quit my job, go full-time on the podcasting, and we will need to use that money to pay the bills. So thankfully I have an understanding wife who went, and she was sick of me being depressed, so she went, yep, okay, let's do it. I was cutting the ties with radio. It was funny because when I left the guy, because I was in a sort of managerial role at the time, the guy who was taking over from me said, do you want to still do some casual shifts? Which means just do some weekend work, and then they could call me when they needed me, and I'd go in. And I initially was like, yeah, absolutely. Yep, that would be great. And then eventually I remember going, no, what are you doing? You're not cutting your ties with this. You are still doing it. And it was just that fear. I was just terrified that I was just going to mess everything up, and then, we would lose our house and not be able to pay the bills and all the rest of it. So I remember I went in one day with my little key fob for the building, the radio station, and I went to the boss and said, here's my key fob. And he was like, why are you handing that in? I said, because I'm done. I'm not coming back. He's like, well, just keep it just in case. I was like, no, I'm not coming back. And I handed it in, and I said, that's it, I'm done. Had the podcast not taken off and it completely flopped and it was terrible, then no, I didn't have a plan B in my head. Then of course radio would always be there in the back of my mind. But there was no other plan. I mean, I definitely did not want to go back to radio. And even though I don't take any of this for granted, I still panic that this could all end tomorrow, and what would I do? But I know categorically in my heart of hearts that I would not go back to radio. I would have to just do something else completely and utterly, totally different. It probably would be, I would probably become a dog trainer because that's my other love. So I would never go back to radio now. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is not a slight on radio. I did my time. I love it very much. I loved it very much. And it taught me my craft. but I certainly wouldn't go back. Anyway, long-winded question to your answer there, mate, but thank you very much indeed for it. Another question from Linda. Who else would Jack do a shared episode with? I loved the one you did with the Prosecutors podcast. Yeah, that was a good episode. I enjoyed that too because we come from kind of two sides of the spectrum. I did one obviously with Gary Jublin from his podcast. We just sort of did a cross thing there. I am trying at the moment to speak with a couple of guys in America who've got a pretty successful American podcast to see if we can do a bit of back and forth. I'm open to doing those with most. I mean, it's obviously got to align with what we do. But yeah, I'm pretty open. There's no one that comes to someone and saying, "Oh, I'd like." Is there? I mean, I've obviously had Jason Flom on. We didn't do a cross promotion between our shows, but I've had him on, which was a good chat. I'm trying to think, is there any podcasts that, I mean, none that would sort of work for what I do. There's none that I go, oh my God, I really want. I mean, Hedley Thomas, obviously. I have reached out to Hedley. Hedley and I had a bit of a back and forth chat a couple of years ago now, where I was pushing to get him to come on for a chat. But obviously he's an extremely busy gentleman. So that never ended up transpiring. But I will still try to get Hedley on because I'd love to have a chat with him. Obviously, everyone knows Hedley Thomas. And if you don't know Hedley Thomas, go find his podcast, Teacher's Pet. You know, fantastic, brilliant journalist. Incredible stuff he does. Next question, Melissa. With the ads, who decides which ads are used? Is that up to Jack or someone else? Okay, let's talk ads, shall we? Because it's the elephant in the room. Okay, let me answer your question first. So I don't choose what ads get played. So a bit about, let's take behind the scenes here. So my show is put out by a company called Acast, who are phenomenal. Absolutely love Acast. They are the greatest human beings on the planet. If you're ever thinking about starting a podcast, go to Acast because they are just the best, and I love them. Without them, I wouldn't be here. Without you and them, I wouldn't be here. So without you, they wouldn't be able to sell things and keep me here. So you're all important to me. But yeah, so they're phenomenal. And they obviously take my show out to clients and say, look, here's this show. Would you like to sponsor it? And then hopefully, fingers crossed, a company comes like AHM. Shout out AHM, you're absolutely legends. We've had Stan, Disney, all those companies come on board and say, yeah, we'd love to sponsor the podcast by having advertisement on the show. And here is the script that we would like Jack to read. Now, it's not always like you must read this word for word. Sometimes it is. They like, this is what we want said. This is what you read. And other times they're like, hey, you can have some fun with it. And I'm like, great. And I will always say, hey, can we record a few of these? Because I know, a lot of people will say, oh, I've heard this ad so many times. And we do try and change it up. But it is tricky to, be constantly changing ads all the time. So I generally don't choose what ads are used. Now, when it comes to, I do have, there are ads that I've said that I will not allow played on my show for reasons, that I just don't agree with certain stuff and certain things. So there are, I won't go into the details of it all, but there are certain things that I've said to Acast, hey, I never want to hear these ads on my show. But other than that, it's kind of like, yeah, great. Because at the end of the day, obviously, this is a job for me. This is what I do Monday to Sunday. I put out, or at one point I was putting out, I sort of dialed it back slightly, but I was putting out 8 episodes of podcasts a week. And people often say to me, oh, how many hours do you work a day? And I'm like, I get up every morning at 4 a.m. I work until my kids get up, do the school stuff. They go to school. I'll work until they're finished school. And then a lot of nights we'll do dinner, put them to bed, and I'm back in here working again. So, and that's not me here sitting here going, oh God, well, I'm such a legend. Look at the hours I put in. But it's just me sort of saying, look, this is a real full on job. And I am extremely grateful to every single advertiser who decides to put an ad on my show. And I know it can be, I know there's so many people who are so, happy for me, I suppose, that I'm able to make a living from this because you enjoy the show. And, I'm only able to continue making this show because of the advertisers. So if you hear an ad, hopefully you'll just go, yes, fantastic. That means this show will keep going, because that's what it means essentially when you hear an ad, that this show gets to keep going. It does. I'll be honest with you, because that's what these are all about. One of the biggest frustrations for me is when people complain to me about ads, because that's like, it's because it's like someone coming to you at work and going, "Oh, you're not getting paid this week," and you're like, "Why?" "Well, because you're just not." It's like, "Yeah, but I worked really hard this week." "I don't care. You're not getting paid." So if you hear an ad, just be like, just cheer. Maybe a bit much, but just if you're hearing ads, it means that this show can keep going, and I am extremely grateful to every single. Because at the same token, like, crime podcasts are so hard to make money from. Because I think people hear these ads and they're like, "Oh, I see this all the time." You see some podcasts, they start out, and when you start out podcasting, if you've got a very small audience or no audience, you make no money. And it's a catch-22, because you make no money because there's no ads in your show. So people are like, "Oh, this show's awesome. There's no ads." And then more and more people listen to your show, which means you get a bigger audience, which means you're able to finally have ads on your show and make money. And then people get their shits and go, "Oh, this person's sold out. Look, he's put ads all through his show. I used to love this show, but now it's got ads in it." It's like, but that's a good thing, because it means the show's becoming more popular and the person making that show can actually make some money out of doing the show. So anyway, I'm very passionate about the ads because I love them, because it means I get to keep doing what I love doing. So yes, thank you, everyone. Moving on from ads. Shout out to AHM. Get yourself some insurance with AHM. All right, that's enough. Donna, another question. Do you ever plan to further pursue the J person from Tariq's case? So I am always, when it comes to cases, and I always say, look, I follow these cases and I continue doing things in the background. I am doing things in the background, but I can't, as much as I'd love to update constantly on like what I'm doing, it is very tricky, because sometimes there's nothing going on. Other times I'm working on stuff, and I am working on stuff involving that particular story and a couple of other stories that I can't really say anything about. And it's a case of, it's not, I'm reliant on other people for things, and other people have got obviously other things going on in their work situation. So I just have to be patient. Unfortunately, when I feel like when it's just fully me in control, I can just go hammer and tong and go, right, let's go. We're going to dive in. We're going to do this today or this week. We're going to get stuck in here. And unfortunately, when I have to get other people involved, it means, they obviously have other things going on in their lives and work, and I have to wait. So long story short is, yes, I certainly do. There is stuff happening with Tariq's story, hopefully, and a few other stories with another project, which I won't go into details. I know that's annoying, but yes. So yes, I do is the short answer to your question. Okay, Kathy Lean. Does Michael Leonard have his own podcast? And if not, why not? He has such a great voice for it. No, he doesn't have his own podcast, probably because he is also a full-time attorney. And he obviously is a very, very busy man. He does have a fantastic voice, and he is a fantastic talent. And that's why he's used on a lot of different TV shows. He's always on Fox News and all the rest of it, because he's brilliant. So no, he doesn't have his own podcast, and I would say the reason why is because he just doesn't have the time for it. And he's on my podcast. What does he need his own podcast for? Melissa, if you, Jack Lawrence, were to be arrested for a crime, what would it be? Oh, gosh. My dad jokes? Maybe? Don't know. I'm a very boring person. I used to not be a boring person. I went through a very, should we say, wild stage between the ages of like 18 and 24, 25 maybe. Well, whenever I met my wife, that's when I slowed down. And at that point in my life, there's a chance that I could have been arrested on a regular occasion. Not for anything harmful, or like I wasn't breaking into houses or robbing people or bashing people or anything like that. And I've spoken in the past, I used to drink rather heavily, and very, very irresponsibly have got behind the wheel of a car after being intoxicated. And I am not proud of any of that whatsoever. I was just an idiot, basically, when I was younger, but a lot of us are. And that's why that's why when I'm talking to people who are incarcerated and they talk about their lives and things that they did that were stupid, I'm not going to judge because I certainly was no angel as a youngster. So yeah, but now I live a very, not boring life, but I mean, some may call it boring, but I do not do very much apart from sit in this room, make podcasts, hang out with my kids, my dog, who, if you're on the video podcast, you'll be able to see here. Very proud of her. She won her ultimate obedience level 1. So that's all I do these days. So not much I would be arrested for apart from my very bad jokes, which is great. I prefer it that way. Teresa, hi Jack. Thanks for your content. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for listening. I'm part of a program where I speak with incarcerated women. How do you stay grounded and keep your everyday life from being affected by the prison environment and the justice system? It's a question I get as well very regularly, is about how do I sort of look after my mental health, and because obviously I hear a lot of stories. Like I've done a lot of catch-up episodes recently, and they've all been hard because I'm talking to people that I truly, truly like, and I truly, truly wish I could help. And I get down in the dumps and frustrated, and I find that very difficult. You know, when it comes to hearing the really awful stuff, the stories, you know, I suppose I've gotten to a point where I just switch. It sounds very cold, but I kind of switch off from that, and I treat it very much as information, I suppose, and try not to take it in too much. Where I struggle is when I can't help someone and I really, really want to help someone. And that's another reason why I want this show at the moment, I'm really pushing hard to try and get this show heard more in America, because essentially that is where we are going to make the most difference, is in America. We are getting there slowly, but not quick enough for my liking. And this is not about me growing an enormous show so I can become very rich and sail off into the sunset. It's because, you know, it's not, that's probably never going to happen. But because I was actually, my wife, we were talking the other day, and because there was a massive lottery draw the other day, 50 million, which got won by one person in WA, I just heard this morning. And she's like, oh God, if we won that lottery, she's like, what would you do? I'm like, I'd still do the podcast. I just wouldn't have to worry about the bills anymore. So I could probably relax more. And I would also put aside a fund to be able to hire some attorneys to get these cases sorted out. Because that's my biggest frustration, is that I feel so hamstrung. You know, talking to Tarek the other day, and I just, part of you just wants to go, right, how much would it cost us to get a helicopter, some dynamite, and just break him out of that place? Obviously, I'm joking. That would never happen. But it's just like, it's just frustrating. So that I do struggle with. So how do I, you know, keep my everyday life from being affected by it? Again, obviously I've got my family, my kids, and yet again, my dog. She's the greatest thing. Apart from my children, my wife, of course. But her and I go out every single day. For those of you who haven't heard it, I've got a dog podcast as well called the Dog People Podcast, because it's one of my passions. It's my hobby, dog training and just doing all that sort of stuff. So that every day I go out without fail. We go out for about an hour, and I don't look at my phone, and it's just her and we go and do some training, some playing, and all that sort of stuff. So that's really, I found that really good for me. And I've recently got back into boxing and stuff like that. So, you know, just the everyday stuff that people, I suppose, do in their lives to try and keep their mental health in check, and having a beer with my neighbour every other Friday. So, yeah, thank you for your question. Debbie Postal. What's happening with Temujin Kensu's case? I've got it. And so I've got a few questions come through from people asking about other people's cases and how they're going, which I won't answer all of these because we've got some of them. We've got episodes coming up with to do catch-up episodes. I'm going to be doing a catch-up episode with Temujin very soon. In fact, there is, I will mention this right now, there's a book out about Temujin's story. Let me find. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes below. But a lovely lady called Joy has written a book about Temujin and his story. There's a Kindle version as well. I'll put the links to those in the show notes of this episode. So make sure you get one of those. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you can get the book from. So yes. But yes, I'll be catching up with Temujin hopefully soon to see what's going on with him. But essentially with his case, sadly, nothing really changes. It's in the hands of the governor of Michigan, because that's really the only avenue he's got left for his freedom, is to get a pardon from the governor of California. Sorry, your question continues here. Does the voice of reason have any input into what could help Temujin's fight for freedom? Okay, so yeah, again, so there's really, and as awful as this is to say, there's legally, as in like appeals and all sorts of stuff, Temujin, because he's obviously been in since 1986, all of those appeals have kind of been exhausted. So that's why it's in the hands of the governor of Michigan. And she's not been willing to come to the party on that. I know that there's been a lot of lobbying for her to do that, but she's kind of ignoring the situation. So, but you can write to her and say that she should look at it for sure. Okay, Jessica Mellor. Jack, when are you bringing a show to Sydney? Oh, I know. I'm sorry. So live shows I've done so far, 1 in Adelaide and 2 in Melbourne. No, 2 in Adelaide, 1 in Melbourne. I don't know. So I've done Adelaide and Melbourne. I haven't done Sydney yet. So when it comes to live shows, I would love to do one everywhere, but it just comes down to, unfortunately, finances, really, because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to. Live shows for me are not about trying to make money. Number one, for me, I'm like I want to come down and meet everybody, and because it blows my mind to come to another state and have people turn up to hear me talk rubbish. I want to do it everywhere. The issue I have, obviously, is that I have to, with the help, obviously, of my manager, we have to hire a venue. And obviously, if I'm coming to Sydney or anywhere else, there's flights and accommodation. And my manager comes, and that's flights and accommodation. And so it's about the cost of all that. So just to give you an idea, and this is, again, it's not me crying poor or anything like that. But like for one of my shows not that long ago, I made about $200. Now, that's not me going, oh, I only made $200. I'm not doing live shows. That's rubbish. It's about me going, that's how tight the margins are when it comes to paying for venues, because you get a venue, you don't just get a space. You have to, there's people involved, there's staff that have to come along to the venue to run the venue, because I use video and sound stuff and all the rest of it. So we have someone there to do that. They have to be paid for. Generally, we go somewhere where there's a bar involved, so you've got bar staff as well. So the margins are so tight that I'm happy to do a show if I just break even and do zero, of course. But the trouble is, it's more likely to go the other way and end up costing money. And I just don't have the ability to do that at this stage, to fly around to do shows and lose money. But the plan is hopefully to do a Sydney show next year. I'd like to do Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. I'd love to do Perth because I've never been to Perth. But again, it just comes down to ticket sales. Can we get people to come to the show in these states as well? Because I know, you'll say, oh, can you come to Sydney? I'm 100%. But if I get a venue, generally, we've got to probably sell 200 plus tickets. And you might go, that's easy. But, well, it's not that easy. I spoke to a friend of mine the other day who's doing a show in Sydney. And this is someone who's quite well known, and they're struggling to sell tickets. And I'm like, well, if you're struggling to sell tickets, then I've got no hope. So yes, the plan is to come to Sydney, but that's why I just haven't been yet. Okay, Cynthia Hamilton. Hi, Jack. Hello. Just finished listening to all of the Dwight episodes. Heartbreaking. Absolutely. It doesn't even begin to describe it. 100%. I agree. It's disgraceful. I noticed in one of the last episodes, it was commented that Becky, so for those who may not have listened, but I'm sure you have, Becky is the daughter of Dwight Bergeron. So Becky has been really happy with the production. I always assumed you didn't release episodes until you were finished with them each case. So I'm wondering if that's correct and you've given the family early access to listen prior to releasing, or are you still producing and editing as you're releasing them for us to listen to? So kind of yes and no in that. So some stories and Dwight's was very similar, but like I'm sort of racing to build and release. So sometimes I will literally finish editing an episode, a few days before it goes out. I try and obviously do it early because I've got the Patrons and Apple Plus subscribers who pay for the privilege of having these early and ad-free episodes. So I try and get them so they get at least a week early. But with a case like Dwight's, which is so heavy on the detail, and I've got to make sure every aspect is right, sometimes I am chasing my tail, and it'll just be literally like I'll finish an episode a couple of days. I mean, sometimes it's been a day before, but also I've got to get to Dom and his team to do as well. So yeah, sometimes that is the case. Others like at the moment I'm working ahead because Christmas is coming and I like to take off some time off with my family, but I still want you guys to have content. So at the moment I've got episodes done up until the 11th of December right now, and I'm recording this in November. So sometimes I am nice and ahead. If it's a sort of, a lot of these are catch-up episodes, they're not as labor-intensive. It's just us chatting and some narration, a bit of music, so that's a bit easier for me. But yes, with something like the Dwight case, it's super heavy. So, but the other thing I do sometimes, and I did this with Dwight's case, is because there's so much detail and because there's so complicated and timelines and, it's very important for me to get this stuff right. I will say to an attorney involved in the case or a family member like Jeanette, who is Dwight's partner, hey, as soon as I'm done this episode, I'm going to send it to you to listen to. And then if you hear anything in there that the details are incorrect or we've got something wrong, tell me as soon as possible and I will get it changed. So yes, I do sometimes allow early access to family members or attorneys. I did it in the Charles McCrory case. So with Charles McCrory's story, because his attorneys were very lovely and were very happy with me sharing the story, I always say to them, look, I don't want to make the situation worse by accidentally putting something in there that is wrong or that you don't want out just yet because you're not fully sort of, there's certain reasons why they might not want details out. So I will send them an early cut of it. So it's not the final product. They don't hear as in the final mixed product, but they'll hear the episode as it's going to go out, essentially. And then they can come back to me and say, hey, this is wrong. Can we take this out or whatnot? So yes, and I did do that with Dwight's particular case. So thank you for your question. Denise Mahoney, is there a case Michael Leonard could take? And if so, why not? As it would be awesome to see him take on one of these cases, especially if those that were misrepresented and help someone get their freedom from the stupid USA justice system. Okay, so I've had this question quite a bit as well. So it's not that Michael Leonard doesn't want to help. In fact, he has offered his help for anyone who gets back into court. So in America, what happens is you don't just get an attorney who does everything. So Michael Leonard's a trial attorney, a trial defense attorney. So his bread and butter, what he does is trials. So someone's been arrested, they're being taken to court on a murder charge. They go to Michael Leonard and say, hey, can you help me? Everyone I'm talking to has obviously been through that stage and has been found guilty. So they need a different kind of attorney, someone who is specifically trained in that style of work. So they need a post-conviction attorney. So, and Michael, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. So I'm told. I don't obviously know the details of it. I'm not an attorney. But a post-conviction attorney knows different aspects of the law because obviously trying to get someone out of prison is different than trying to stop them going in the first place. So it's not Michael Leonard's area of expertise. That's why he can't really help in that respect. But he has said that if any of our guys get, say, a new trial, so if someone was to get their conviction overturned and then they're going to be retried, Michael Leonard has said that he will help any of our people that we've had on the show and do those trials pro bono, which means free. So that's why Michael Leonard... it's not sort of got involved with anyone who's actually incarcerated. I mean, he can offer some bits and pieces of advice, and he has done with a couple of the guys who I've dealt with, but again, he's not an expert in post-conviction. But thank you for your question. Ruthie Cox, if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do? Sleep. If you'd be invisible for, I don't know. Never thought of it. I mean, look, I was going to say go into a bank and take some money, but banks aren't even open anymore these days, are they? I don't know what I would do. It's invisible for a day. I'm so boring these days. I probably would have asked me that question 10 years ago. I would have come up with some sort of answer. I'm drinking a kombucha right now, and I'm not. This isn't sponsored, by the way. If it's being placed on the podcast, I would like to be sponsored by Remedy Kombucha. So there's a free plug for you, Remedy. But no, I don't know what I would do. So I'm sorry for that terrible answer, Ruthie. I could have thought of something more exciting. Yeah, no, I've got nothing for you. Sorry. Anyway, this is a long episode. Thank you so much indeed for all your questions. We've got to do the draw before we end this episode. So we are going to do that. So if you asked a question, it doesn't matter if I didn't answer it. So as I said, there's a lot of people who ask me how certain people are doing. I'm doing catch-up episodes with a lot of the people that you asked about. So yeah, you'll obviously hear the answer to how they're going in those catch-up episodes. But if you did ask a question, then thank you very much. You are in the draw, which we're going to do right now. If you're on the video podcast, you should be able to see now the Winnie Wheel. Everyone's names has been put on a Winnie Wheel. Of course, the winner of this gets a 12-month subscription to Patreon. Plus, again, sippy cup, which if you're listening in Radio Land, you won't be able to see. If you're video, you will. It's beautiful, though. You'll love it, I'm sure. Okay, let's quickly spin this wheel, see what we get. Is there any sound with this spinny wheel? Yeah, there is. There it is. Spinny wheel goes around, and the winner is Nikki Dayton. It was David Werner. And a clap as well, David Werner. Well done, David Werner. Sorry, Nikki, for the false start. I thought it was about to land on your name, and it just clicked over to David Werner. Well done, David Werner. Mate, I will be in touch with you so we can get you that 12-month subscription. And, of course, get your address so we can send you this wonderful sippy cup. So thank you so much indeed again for everyone's questions. We'll do another Q&A at some other time. I hope you enjoyed this video version of 1 Minute Remaining. I found it fascinating. Well, that is if it works. If it doesn't work, then you won't see my face, and we'll never speak of this again. Until next time.
1 Minute Remaining is a Mashed Pumpkin production, created, hosted, and produced by Jack Lawrence. Audio and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans of Earsay.